Honorable Dr. Alex Hankey. Let us have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Honorable Dr. Alex Hankey. I would like to...
Namaskar. I want to start by thanking Dr. Vishwanath Karad, Dr. Rahul Karad and Sunil Karad and all the great luminaries of Maharashtra Institute of Technology who have invited me to speak today. I notice that of the speakers in this session, 4 are holdovers from yesterday's session. We have had management science, which is a very good analysis of administration and how things should be divided up for perfect management. We also have with us Dr. Vijay-Badkar, who is a true scientist and technologist, but I'm the only person from physical science to stand before you and tackle this problem of what is religion and science. Where do the two meet? Now, I can promise you, I would like to tell the people organizing time that I'm officially given 13 minutes, not 9 minutes. Could the people organizing the time note that I'm given 13 minutes, not 9 minutes? So, thank you. We have heard it said that where science stops, yoga begins. I shall show you that this is really not true. We can have a science of yoga, a science of consciousness, a science of dhyan, samadhi, and a science of higher states of consciousness, on all of which I have written papers, and I'm going to be bold enough to try and outline a section today which tells you the story of Einstein's dream. I first quote one of the main people from my college at Cambridge, Sir Francis Bacon, who said, "Many will travel and knowledge will increase." He was quoting Daniel, the book of Daniel and the Bible, and I think that this is true of this conference. Many will travel and knowledge will increase. Einstein's vision was that God is in charge of the universe. Stephen Hawking and his collaborator Mladenov published a book called The Grand Design. I want to show you the grand design of how it's possible for us to have free will, for quantum mechanics to operate at microscopic levels, and for us all to have freedom of choice, and for God to be in charge. So the objectives is for me to demonstrate a physical theory consisting of modern developments in biology called complexity biology, mostly developed by my friend Stuart Kaufman at the Santa Fe Institute. Then, based on that, a theory of consciousness from the property of complexity biology called critical instabilities, which gives us a theory of information where you have self-awareness at its core. So the idea of self-awareness, described so beautifully yesterday by Scott Heriot in his account of Turiya, in verse, I think it was 6 of the Mandukya Upanishad, gives us a very good start. And Advaita Vedanta is what tells us that the self knows itself by itself and through itself. And together with Shiksha, which I shall show you, the first Vedanga, actually can give you an account of the cognition of what I call forms, rupa. The cognition of ideas is more fundamental than digital information. So the influence of this gives us successive levels of wholeness which can actually act from the whole universe, the level of God, down to influence human awareness. So Einstein's vision. Supreme intelligence, God, is in charge of creation. Everything happens according to his design. And Einstein lacked classical physics because although it didn't give human freedom any choice and there was no concept of enlightenment, everything happened according to God's design. But there are problems. Descartes had a great realization that in a Galilean universe, or a mechanical universe, described by the kinematics of Galileo Galilei, there would be no freedom of choice. He went to Sweden and he taught Queen Christina of Sweden that the soul was just an impotent witness. Now we know from Vedic sciences that the soul can be a witness. There can be Sakshi, dominating awareness. That's what Mundaka Upanishad tells us. But there was no way to enlightenment or to spiritual liberation. There was no sense of spirituality in Descartes' vision. Einstein could accept Descartes' mechanical universe, and he noted that by contrast, quantum theory makes nature seem capricious. All sorts of things. So how do we go beyond this? Bohm collaborated with Einstein between the early 50s and the early 60s after Einstein had died, and he attempted to develop a theory called hidden variables that would restore causality at a mechanical level. It was refuted by a famous theorem by a Scottish physicist working at CERN in Geneva called John Bell, Bell's theorem in '64. And the experimental implications of Bell's theorem were proved by Friedman and Clauser acting at the University of Berkeley in 1972, and a much more refined experiment by Alan Aspect at the University of Paris in 1982. So we know that quantum theory cannot be used to restore a mechanical causal universe. You're left with outcomes being random, and the only law is probability. And this is what Einstein so much objected to. He had arguments with Bohr, and he published a famous paper on the subject. He said, "Raffiniert ist der Herrgott, aber boshaft ist nicht." This is one of his famous quotations. God is subtle, but he's not malicious. Equally speaking, nature is not capricious. So the challenge, next slide please, is how to go beyond this. Bohm was refuted by Bell's theorem. The experiments confirmed it. So quantum theory is true. How do we realize Einstein's vision? There's a rigorous solution by known and new physics that I'm going to present to you. Papers published in 2014, beg your pardon for the misprint, 2015, 2017, and more recently. That is the subject of this presentation. So the solution in outline: modern biology can support consciousness with freedom of choice. It refutes Descartes. The universe as a whole can influence such choices. Choices are correlated with external factors, such as other humans or animals in the case of telepathy, and bodies containing large amounts of quantum correlations, up to and excluding the whole universe, i.e., from this perspective, God, the consciousness of the whole universe and beyond the universe. So this is the vision I wish to give to you, and I want to present you the solution in about 4 parts. Complexity biology is very remarkable because instead of seeing molecules as primary, as in molecular biology, it sees regulation as primary. And it says that the loci of control, the controlling points of regulation, are at a condition that it calls criticality. Criticality means critical instability, which is a field in which I wrote my PhD thesis between 1970 and 72. Now, if you think about it from a common sense perspective, because I can do things, I can raise my arms, I think voluntarily, I can put them up or to the right, I can send semaphore signals. Consciousness must be at the locus of control of my motor cortex. It's well known that the attention is directed from the frontal cortex. We know we can direct our attention. That's common feeling, common knowledge. So consciousness is at the locus of control of the frontal cortex. We can plan things for tomorrow. That happens deep underneath, behind the ajna here. And that is in the prefrontal cortex. The physics of consciousness must therefore be the physics of the loci of control. Bottom line of this slide, it's the physics of instability. So, the physics of instability, it turns out, and I won't try to prove this for you because it takes quite a lot of detailed consideration. It contains a perfectly self-observing loop. It models, therefore, it models Atma as self. Please be very careful when reading Arjuna. He was a very naughty boy, in my opinion. He deliberately obfuscated the arguments. It's Atma. The self knows itself by itself and through itself. It also collapses wave functions because it's perfectly self-observing. It plays the role required by quantum theory. It solves the Schrödinger's cat paradox, and the cat collapses its own wave function. And one can compare this with various things by Roger Penrose, which I won't try to do. Next slide. Next slide, please. The physics of instability, it models, sorry, this is The solution involves the encoding of Platonic forms. I have 2 minutes 45 on my clock here. Please note, I have 2 minutes 30 on this clock. The intellect is seen as operating on ideas. It's a completely new vision of cognitive science. The vision agrees with Socrates and Plato, Immanuel Kant, phenomenology, Edmund Husserl and Martin Heidegger, famous philosophers of the 20th century. So I'm telling you the relation between not just physics and consciousness, which in Vedic sciences is at the heart of religion and the Upanishads. I'm also telling you about the relationship between science and philosophy. David Chalmers' work that this reproduces wrote a famous book called The Conscious Mind, and Jonathan Shear, who edited the book of essays, Consciousness, the Hard Problem. So instabilities contain high levels of internal coherence. It's critical point coherence, not quantum coherence. It's due to critical point correlations, and it can connect to other sources of correlations, other people. When it connects from heart to heart, then you have the possibility of telepathy. So I can develop a rigorous theory of telepathic communication from this theory. When it connects to outside objects with high levels of coherence, these turn out to be the navagrahas. So I have got a very good theory of how the navagrahas can influence instabilities in the human form and in animals. And this book is meant to be being published this week. It's called The Science of Medical Astrology Towards a Proof of Jyotish. So the solution is to look at larger sources of matter. For instance, our Milky Way galaxy has high levels of internal quantum coherence. The local group of galaxies, the main galaxy group, are supercluster, are larger superclusters than the whole universe. The direction of the control, you'll see from the bottom line, is from the whole to the parts. So that shows you that we can do this. So the grand design up to this part, cosmic creative intelligence influences decisions at instability. Hence, cosmic creative intelligence, God, is in charge. This fulfills Einstein's dream. Forgive me, I shall take another 20 seconds. So man has freedom of choice. God is in charge of the future of creation. God acts through quantum correlations, a quantum universe, in influencing instabilities. Einstein's vision is realized and restored by means of complexity biology, consciousness at loci of control at criticality, the influence of external sources of correlations, the wholeness of all things acting on the parts. Anuraniyan Mahato Mahiyan. God's influence encompasses the entire creation. Namaskar and thank you, and I apologize for going over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alex Hankey. Let's give him a big round of applause, my friends, for his invaluable inputs.